So what I'm going to talk about today is a special add-in called photoview. So remember, when I say add-in, I mean kind of like a heavy set of tool sets for SolidWorks. It's not one of those right-click options that you just turn on and off. This is almost like a program in itself that you can turn on. And I was really happy when photoview first came out. I used SolidWorks since 2004, and I remember when this first came out. It was around 2009 and 2009 and 2010, and I remember this was a really beneficial tool. And pretty much what it is a way of rendering photorealistic images of your designs and models. Okay, so it will render shadows, it will render caustics, reflections, bump maps, all of those things. And the reason I really like this is because when I used to do CGI, this process was really tedious. To get smooth shadows like that was really tedious. You had to set up your global illumination environment, and your photons would glitch out all the time. They would give you these blobs that would completely bug out and glitch and things like that. And when I first used the photo view, I was like, wow, it was just a click of a button. I can get some pretty decent renderings, which is really cool because you can use this to show how your design would look like in real life. So you can include this on your catalogs, you can include this on your booklets or the cover of your ads or anything like that. So it's a very good tool to know. So what I'm gonna do now is run a rendering of this model here, a very basic rendering. This is gonna be a very short tutorial. Okay, so first thing you're gonna do is, like I said, this is not one of those lightweight tool sets. This is a bit of a standalone program, and it's called PhotoView 360. Click OK, and as you can see, it showed up here with a bunch of options. So the first thing you really got to do is to set your camera. So I'm going to add a camera so that my view is fixed. I can render off the viewport. I don't need a camera to render. I'm just setting it up just so I have a fixed reference. All right. So let's say we want this, and I'm just going to change the focal length a little bit so we can see more out of it. And there we have it. I'm going to click OK. So now, as you can see, I have a camera here. See, and I cannot move it. It's fixed. So that's good. So to set up a scene, you need two things. You need the texture and you need the background. So to set the texture, there are many ways you can do this. This is one way. You just hit that and you pick a color. Okay. You can also do it by right-clicking and hitting a appearance on the body or whichever. All right. You can do it that way, or you can even just drag it from the library. You see, there's a library. You have a bunch of materials like chrome. Let's say we want to put a chrome. All right, you can do that too. And all your appearances, they show up on the display manager. So you see, when I click this, I see all the colors that I've added. The chrome, the color, all right. And you can even modify these. If you edit appearance, you can modify the color or some of the more advanced settings like the bump mapping, all right, which is just a way to see how granular, how casty it looks. And you can do that with bump mapping. Or how shiny it is with the illumination. You can change how shiny it is, how transparent, how much it reflects. So maybe like you're designing an engine, you want to show like certain parts that look rusty. You may even want to change the texture. You may want to add like a special texture on it instead of like a brushed finish or like a cast finish. You can modify those things to make it look just the way you want it. So anyways, these are the appearances, and you can modify them any way you like. And then the second box, so this was appearance, this is the scene, this is the background. And you can change that background to anything you want. So if your machine's going to go on a rooftop or a courtyard or anything like that, you can change it. Or you can even go to the library here and add the scenes by hand. All right, maybe your machine's going in a factory. You can do that. So remember to update the appearance and update the background. And I'll let you play around with all the settings to really understand what you can and can't do. You can also add lights. So not only can you add a camera, you can also add lights to make it look just the way you want. Okay, spotlight, point light, and mess with the shadows, whether they're blurred out or harsh or anything like that. So now that we have a decent scene, we can start to render it. And one of the things I encourage you to do is go to the options where you can set the resolution, whether you want this cel shaded or anything like that. You can set all those options here. But when you're ready, you can hit final render and it's going to run the algorithms to render the image. It's calculating all of the reflections, and you can see how it takes some time, and that's kind of why video games look so bad relative to movies, because in movies they can run these complex algorithms through render farms through the weekend, right? But in video games, they got to do that 24 times a second. That's the real-time sequence for video games. All right, so as you can see, there's a bit of lag on my rendering, but it's still not terrible. But as you can see, this definitely looks a lot more realistic than what you see on my viewport. One feature I really like is this render region. A lot of times when you are rendering complicated models, you don't want to render the whole thing because it's just gonna take too long. So instead, you do a render region. So let's say I change this to some other cast metal, and then let's say I hit render again. See final render. Let's see what happens when I click that. See how it's just updating what's on my render region? So that's good because then instead of rendering the whole thing, I render just the render region. Okay? And that can save me time. Because a lot of times I would render these complicated machines and it would take days, 2 or 3 days to finish a rendering. And after those 3 days, I'd realize I got garbage because I didn't realize certain lights or certain textures weren't set up right. So the render region really helped me out. And then when you're done, you just hit, if you want to turn this off, just remove it and then it's going to render the whole thing again. So then when you're done with the final render, you can just hit save preview image, save it to your desktop or whatever, and now you have an image that you can use on your report.